Lina Marquez stood at the edge of the ship's deck, her hands gripping the cold metal rail as the endless blue of the Pacific stretched out before her. Beneath her, the engine thrummed with the power of the massive cruise ship as it cut through the water, its sails filled with promises of distant lands and fleeting luxury. The cool ocean breeze ruffled her long black hair, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside her. The warm breeze felt like an illusion, a fleeting reminder of the life she had left behind in the Philippines, the small, crumbling fishing village that had always felt too small for her dreams. Lina had been born into struggle. Her parents, though loving, had been poor. Her father was a fisherman, waking at dawn to haul in the day's catch, while her mother worked tirelessly in the fields, always bending her back to the land. They had dreams, too, dreams of sending their children to school, dreams of a better life. But despite their hard work, those dreams always seemed just out of reach. There was no money for luxuries, no grand vacations, no new clothes. There was only enough to survive, one day after another, always with the hope that one day things would be different. But Lina had bigger dreams. As a child, she had watched the women in her village struggle, never escaping the poverty that gripped them. She knew from a young age that she couldn't follow in their footsteps. She couldn't settle for a life of quiet despair. There had to be more, there had to be a way out. So, when she was old enough, she left her village and took a job on a cruise ship, hoping it would be the ticket to something greater. The pay was low, the hours long, and the work exhausting. Scrubbing decks, serving drinks, smiling at strangers. All for a handful of tips and the promise that one day, maybe, she'd get a break. She lived in the cramped crew quarters below deck, where the air was thick with the smell of salt and oil. Her days blurred together, serving meals, cleaning cabins, doing whatever was needed to keep the ship running smoothly. The monotony of it all wore on her. But every paycheck sent back to her family gave her a brief sense of purpose. She sent the money home, hoping it would help her parents, hoping it would ease their struggle. And yet, despite her best efforts, the money never seemed enough. They always needed more. Lina knew the value of hard work, but she also knew that hard work alone wouldn't get her out of this life. She had dreams, fantasies of luxury, of being someone important, someone who didn't have to scrub floors or serve food to rich strangers. Her eyes would often wander across the passengers on the ship, the ones who were dressed in fine clothes, their laughter echoing across the dining rooms. They sipped expensive cocktails, lounging by the pool while she worked, always smiling, always in the background. She wasn't like them. She had to be more than this. She told herself she would never be just a waitress or a servant. She deserved more. It wasn't long before the Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim appeared on the horizon of her life. He was an older man, with dark eyes that seemed to see everything, yet revealed nothing. He boarded the ship one evening in a flurry of wealth, dressed in a tailored suit, his presence commanding attention as he made his way up the gangplank, surrounded by a group of attendants. He exuded power and wealth, the kind of life that Lina could only dream of. As he passed by, his eyes lingered on her for a moment. Just a brief glance, but it was enough to stir something deep inside her. It wasn't long before he summoned her. She was assigned to serve him drinks that night, bringing them to his private cabin. As she entered, the rich scent of leather and cedar filled her senses. The room was lavish, gold trim, velvet curtains, soft lighting. And there he was, lounging on a plush chair, his eyes studying her. There was no need for words, only a look. He motioned for her to sit, and she hesitated, but then she obeyed. His eyes never left hers as he handed her a drink. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like more. She realized then that he wasn't just offering a drink. He was offering her a glimpse into another world, a world she had always dreamed of. He slipped her cash that evening, an envelope of crisp bills, the weight of it both intoxicating and humbling. "For your troubles," he said with a smile, and she took it, her heart racing. This was the first time anyone had treated her like this, like she was worth something, like she was deserving of more than just a wage for her labor. It was a door, a crack in the wall between the life she had and the life she wanted. And she knew in that moment that she would do whatever it took to step through it. The days following that encounter felt like a blur. The Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim continued to seek her out, each meeting more lavish than the last. He gave her gifts, gold necklaces, designer handbags, tickets to exclusive areas on the ship. She marveled at the way he moved through the world, so effortlessly powerful, so in control of everything around him. But with each gift came a deeper craving. She didn't just want these material things. She wanted the life that came with them. The life she had always dreamed of, the life of luxury and power. She told herself that this was her chance, her only chance to rise above it all. Soon, her ambitions began to show. She would mention, in passing, that she wouldn't be working on the ship for long. She would talk about the future, about the possibilities. To her fellow workers, it was just talk, just another dream. But to Lina, it was a plan, her plan. She wasn't just serving drinks anymore. She was making her escape. And when he invited her aboard his private yacht, the dream started to feel real. He was a thrilling diversion to him. Just another mistress to add to the collection. But to her, he was the key to everything. He would give her the life she had always wanted. She just had to make him see it. Her ambition was no longer just a whisper in the back of her mind. It was her reality, and she was willing to do whatever it took to make it come true. As the days passed, Lina's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The gifts kept coming, each one more extravagant than the last. The gold necklaces, the designer handbags, the lavish dinners at exclusive restaurants in distant ports. The Sheikh's attentions were steady, but never constant. He would visit her in her small quarters, drop off a gift, maybe a few whispered words of appreciation, then disappear again. For a time, she basked in the glow of his affection, the attention that made her feel like someone important. But it wasn't enough. Lina sent money home regularly, her hands shaking as she counted the bills before placing them in envelopes, ensuring every peso would reach her family. The latest items, a new fridge, a stove, a washing machine, were all carefully planned, ensuring that each purchase would lift the weight off her parents' shoulders just a little bit more. The pride in her mother's voice when she called to thank her echoed in Lina's mind long after the conversation ended. This was why she did it. This was the dream she had been chasing, to break free from the poverty that had defined her life. But gratitude soon began to fade into something darker, something more dangerous. The gifts, the praise, the constant validation, it was no longer enough. Felt like a game now, a game she intended to win. She began to let her co-workers in on a secret. She spoke of her connection to the Sheikh, casually mentioning the lavish moments they'd shared. She told them she wouldn't be around much longer. Soon, she would leave this life behind, all thanks to him. Her confidence soared. No longer just a humble cruise worker, she saw herself rising above it all. She started to brag, even boast, her voice dropping in tone, her eyes glinting with the promise of a future she had always imagined but never believed she could reach. The other workers whispered about her behind her back, about how her eyes shone with ambition and arrogance. They didn't understand. They didn't see what she saw. This wasn't just about gifts or fleeting moments of pleasure. This was the start of something bigger, something that would change everything. Lina didn't see it as an affair anymore. She wasn't just a mistress to him. She was the one who would change his life too. She began to believe that she was the key to his future, the one he had been waiting for. To her, the Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim was falling under her spell. Each time he called her to his private yacht, each time she stood by his side, the more she believed in their future together. He was growing more and more enchanted by her charm, her beauty, the way she made him feel powerful, needed, wanted. But that was not how he saw it. To him, she was simply a diversion, a temporary escape from the pressures of his life. His wife, his children, his empire, they were the things that mattered. The Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim compartmentalized his world, keeping his marriage and family safe on one side, while his secret world with Lina was kept carefully hidden on the other. She was a thrilling escape, a beautiful young woman who made him feel alive again, but she was a distraction, nothing more. Lina, however, saw things differently. Her growing hunger for more began to eat at her. It wasn't just the jewelry or the occasional whispers of affection. She began to demand more, Property, land, something real. A villa in Dubai, perhaps, or land in Manila that she could build her own life on. The gifts were no longer enough. She wanted a future, a tangible one. She wanted acknowledgement, a promise that she was not just a fling, not just a diversion. Her demands became sharper. When the Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim dismissed her request for a villa, she retaliated with a quiet threat. "I'll come to your home. I'll tell your wife." The words tasted bitter in her mouth, but she didn't care. She had given him so much, her time, her body, her loyalty, and he had given her little in return. His reluctance to offer more, to truly commit, sparked something in her. A desire to make him understand that she was the key to everything. Her demands grew bolder. "I'm not asking for a palace," she would tell him. "I'm asking for what's mine, what you promised me." She needed the validation now, the acknowledgement that she had earned a place in his world. As the weeks passed, coworkers began to notice the shift in her behavior. Her arrogance was undeniable. She moved through the ship with a newfound sense of entitlement. Lina was no longer the same woman they had known, the shy, hardworking girl who kept her head down. Now, she walked with her chin high, a smirk on her lips, as if she knew something the others didn't. Her ambition had become obvious. Whispers followed her wherever she went, rumors of her relationship with the Sheikh, of her extravagant lifestyle, of her growing demands. The Sheikh, however, remained indifferent. He continued to play his part, giving her just enough to keep her satisfied, but never fully committing. The more she pushed, the more he resisted, and for the first time, Lina felt a pang of frustration. He was laughing at her, dismissing her demands as childish. He saw her ambition as a passing fancy, something that could be brushed off with a joke or a shrug. Her pride cracked. The dream she had built, the future she had imagined, began to falter. She had worked so hard to get here, to step into his world, and now it was slipping away. For the first time, she felt humiliated, rejected. But Lina was not the type to back down. She refused to let her dream shatter so easily. She doubled down, her resolve hardening. She would make him see her worth. If he wouldn't give her the life she wanted, she would take it. The game had changed. Now it was about proving herself, about showing him that she was worthy of more than just gifts and promises. She wasn't going to be discarded. She wasn't going to let him treat her like a passing fancy. She would make him see that she was destined for more. And as the Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim laughed off her demands, she began to plan her next move. The game was only beginning. Lina's demands grew louder, more insistent, each word slipping from her lips like a well-practiced line. She no longer waited for him to offer gifts. She expected them. She demanded them. Each day, the list grew longer. Property in Manila, a villa in Dubai, luxury cars, public acknowledgement of their connection. She had been patient, playing her part, but now it was time for him to play his. The gifts, the attention, the promises. None of it was enough anymore. She had invested too much, worked too hard to let it slip away now. The Sheikh, however, began to grow colder. His responses became more distant, his affections fleeting. At first, she tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just a phase, just a moment of detachment. But soon, the reality of his indifference set in. He had stopped giving her the attention she craved. The lavish gifts had dried up, replaced by polite but detached conversations. He was pulling away. In the quiet moments aboard the ship, Lina found herself pacing her small cabin, her mind racing with thoughts of him. His distance was more than a rejection, it felt like betrayal. She had worked so hard, sacrificed so much to be noticed by him. And now, after all she had done, he was pushing her away. The money, the gifts, the dreams of a new life, they all seemed so close, within reach. But the harder she pushed, the further he seemed to slip through her fingers. Her frustration simmered beneath the surface, but it was no longer just anger. It was desperation. Desperation to prove that she was not just another woman in his life, not just another pretty face to pass the time with. She had believed in this connection, in the future he had promised her, and now he was taking it all away. Her rage grew, and with it, her determination. She would not let him take everything from her. The sheik, for his part, had been playing a careful game. To him, Lina was a diversion, a beautiful, eager distraction that he could indulge in when the weight of his responsibilities became too much to bear. But he never intended for it to go any further. His life was complicated enough without adding a mistress into the mix. He had a wife, children, and an empire to protect. Lina, no matter how charming, was nothing more than a temporary escape from the pressures of his world. But now she was becoming a problem. Her demands, her threats, each one felt like a blow to his carefully constructed world. He had indulged her, giving her attention, giving her gifts, but the moment she began to demand more, he saw the danger. She was no longer just a mistress. She was a liability. She threatened to expose him, to ruin the delicate balance he had worked so hard to maintain. The thought of losing control, of having his empire and family torn apart by a woman who had mistaken indulgence for love, filled him with disgust. As the days passed, he distanced himself further, hoping that she would get the message. But she didn't. She couldn't. She had invested too much. Her heart, her soul, her dreams. She wasn't about to back down now. The confrontation came unexpectedly, one evening aboard his yacht. He had invited her again, but this time it was different. This time she came prepared. She entered his cabin with a fire in her eyes, her voice steady but filled with an edge of determination. She had no time for games anymore. There would be no more subtle hints, no more flirtations. She was done waiting. "Marriage or millions?" she said, her words hanging in the air. "You promised me a life, a real life. If you won't give me what you promised, I'll expose you. I'll tell your wife. I'll tell the world what we've shared." His expression hardened, his lips thinning as she spoke. For a moment he said nothing, only stared at her with cold, calculating eyes. He had always believed he could control this, that his wealth and power would keep her in check. But she was no longer the naive woman he had first met. She had grown bolder, more demanding, and the power dynamic had shifted. He realized, with growing horror, that she wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. Her voice grew louder, her frustration spilling over. "I didn't ask for just money, Sheikh. I asked for a life with you, a future that doesn't end with me scrubbing floors and serving drinks. If you can't give me that, then you can't have me." The Sheikh's gaze flickered, a flash of something dark crossing his features. The weight of the situation settled over him like a heavy fog. His pride was at stake, his family's honor, his empire. She had crossed a line. He had given her so much, and yet she wanted more. She wanted to take everything. She had become a threat, a liability. Lina watched him, her heart pounding in her chest, waiting for him to respond. She saw the flicker of rage in his eyes, the tightening of his jaw, and for the first time, she realized just how dangerous this moment was. The Sheikh's composure was slipping. She had pushed him too far, and now she would have to pay the price. He moved toward the bar, his steps deliberate and heavy. Lina watched, her breath catching in her throat as he reached for something. A jeweled dagger, the kind that gleamed under the dim yacht lighting. It was an ornate piece, displayed like a trophy on the bar, a symbol of his wealth and power. The tension in the room was palpable, and Lina knew, deep down, that this was the moment. The fragile boundary between them had shattered. There was no going back now. The sound of his breath grew louder, each inhale sharp, each exhale shaky. Her words had ignited something in him, something primal, something that could not be undone. The knife gleamed in his hand, and for a brief moment, Lina felt a chill run down her spine. The storm outside raged, the winds howling against the windows, as if nature itself was warning her. But Lina didn't see the storm. She only saw him, the man who could give her everything she had ever dreamed of, or destroy her completely. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, she realized the depth of her mistake. The night was warm, the stars scattered across the black velvet sky as the yacht floated serenely on the still waters of the Arabian Gulf. The gentle sound of the ocean lapping against the hull was the only noise that filled the air, a stark contrast to the tension building inside the opulent VIP suite. Inside, Lina Marquez stood at the window, gazing out at the lights of the distant city, her mind racing. She could hear his footsteps behind her, the soft click of his shoes on the polished floor. He entered the room, his presence as commanding as always. The sheik, dressed in his customary tailored suit, moved with the confident grace of a man who had everything: power, wealth, influence. But in that moment, he was nothing more than a man with a secret to protect, standing across from a woman who was no longer interested in playing by the rules. Lina turned to face him, her eyes hard, her voice steady. "You promised me a life, Sheikh. You promised me more than just gifts and fleeting moments of pleasure. I want more. I want the life I deserve, the life you promised me. If you won't give it to me, then I'll destroy yours." The words hung in the air, her anger sharp and biting. She had pushed him so many times, demanded so much, but this time it felt different. The fantasy she had built in her mind, the villa in Dubai, the mansion in Manila, the life of luxury, was slipping through her fingers. She had come this far, and now she wasn't about to let it all go. Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the desperation that had begun to consume her. The Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim stood still, his face unreadable. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of irritation, perhaps, or maybe even fear, that made her heart race. For a moment, he didn't respond, only stared at her, as if weighing his options. Then, without warning, the composure he had maintained for so long shattered. His hand clenched into a fist, his jaw tightening. His pride, something he had guarded with every fiber of his being, had been bruised. And in that moment, it was clear to both of them that there was no turning back. Lina took a step forward, her body tense with anticipation. "You think you can control me, Sheikh? You think I'll just walk away and let you live your perfect life while I'm left with nothing?" She took another step, her voice rising. "I'm done being your secret. I'm done being your fantasy. If I can't have the life you promised, then neither can you." In the dim light of the cabin, the tension between them crackled. For a moment, it felt as if the entire world had paused. Time stood still, the ocean outside as silent as the storm that raged inside the sheik. Without another word, he moved toward the bar. His hand brushed over the polished surface, and for a moment, it seemed as though he was trying to control his breathing, to regain some semblance of calm. But then his fingers wrapped around the hilt of the jeweled dagger displayed there. A beautiful piece, its blade glinting in the soft light. Lina's eyes widened. She had seen the dagger before, admired it in passing, but never once had she imagined it would come to this. The Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim turned to face her, the dagger now in his hand. His eyes were cold, the mask of control slipping away. "You've made your choice," he said, his voice low and controlled, but laced with anger. "You've pushed me too far." Lina took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. Her breath came in short gasps as she tried to process what was happening. She had always believed she could control this situation. She had believed that he would bend to her will. But now, in the face of his fury, she realized she had underestimated the depth of his pride. In a swift motion, the Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim lunged at her, the dagger flashing in the dim light of the cabin. The sound of the blade slicing through the air was drowned out by the pounding of Lina's heart in her ears. Before she could react, the dagger was thrust into her chest. The shock of the impact sent a jolt through her body, and she staggered back, her hands clutching at the wound as blood began to seep through her fingers. Her eyes widened in disbelief, her mind racing to understand what had just happened. She had thought this was a game. She had thought she could control it. But now, as the pain exploded through her, she realized the terrible truth. She was no longer in control. The Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim stood over her, his breath ragged, his face a mask of fury and fear, his empire, his pride, his reputation. All of it was slipping away, and in that moment, he saw her not as a woman he had indulged, but as a threat that needed to be silenced. Lina's body crumpled to the floor, her dream dissolving instantly. Her vision blurred, the edges of the room darkening as blood pooled beneath her. The last thing she saw before her eyes closed was the Persian carpet beneath her, its rich red fibers now stained with her blood. The Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim stood over her, the dagger still clenched tightly in his hand. For a moment, he looked down at her, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away, leaving her lifeless body sprawled on the floor. The sound of shouting echoed down the hallway outside the cabin. The crew, hearing the commotion, rushed to the scene, but they were too late. By the time they entered the room, the Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim had already given orders to his guards, who swiftly covered the scene. The body was concealed, the evidence hidden away as the yacht continued its silent drift through the night. By dawn, the yacht floated quietly in the open water, the body of the woman who had dreamed of a life she could never have now buried beneath the weight of her own ambition. The world outside continued to turn, but for those aboard the yacht, the night had ended in silence. Its only witness the sea. The dream she had clung to had been torn apart, just like the life she had envisioned. It was gone, buried with her, another casualty of greed and illusion. In the hours that followed, the Sheikh's staff moved swiftly. The yacht continued its course as if nothing had happened, its opulent interiors untouched by the violence that had just unfolded. The body of Lina Marquez was quickly removed from the VIP cabin, hidden away in the shadows of the ship. Her blood-stained clothing, the evidence of her violent end, was disposed of quietly, out of sight, as the crew went about their tasks. Orders were given in hushed tones, each movement designed to erase the trace of the tragedy that had occurred in the heart of the luxury vessel. The whispers began almost immediately, though. As the crew circulated through their duties, they exchanged nervous glances and hushed conversations, but fear kept them silent. No one dared to speak openly about the events of that night. The Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim was powerful, untouchable, and his empire was not something to be trifled with. For all their curiosity, for all their suspicion, the crew knew better than to push the issue. The yacht sailed on, its passengers oblivious to the secrets that festered beneath its gleaming surface. Back in the Philippines, Lina's family felt the absence of their daughter keenly. For years, she had sent money back home, supporting her parents with the hope of one day lifting them from their struggles. But now the remittances stopped. The calls ceased. Her mother, who had always been so proud of Lina's hard work, called her phone repeatedly, only to be met with silence. She never received the message Lina had tried to send, the one where she had promised to return home with a life changed forever. To them, it was as if she had vanished into thin air. Her disappearance was quietly chalked up to a tragic accident. Lost at sea, another migrant worker who had ventured too far and paid the price for chasing illusions of a better life. No one questioned it. No one would. It was easier to believe that Lina had gotten caught in the turbulent waters of the ocean, another victim of fate. The truth, buried in the depths of the sea, remained untold. For the Sheikh, life continued as if nothing had changed. The yacht sailed on, and with it the life he had built, his empire, his family, his public image. He brushed off any mention of Lina, any questions that came from those who had noticed her absence. He continued his business, his social life, his perfect world, keeping the darkest secret locked away where no one could see it. But whispers began to spread in elite circles. Subtle rumors of a woman who had disappeared, who had dared to challenge a man with everything to lose. The story circulated quietly among the few who knew the Sheikh's true nature, those with enough power to understand the implications of what had happened. But to the outside world, to the public eye, the Sheikh Faris Al-Qasim was untouchable. His wealth, his name, his position in society ensured that no one could threaten him without consequence. The whispers would die down and life would go on. But for those who had witnessed the events on the yacht, the price of silence was one they could never forget. Among the workers on the cruise ship there was a shift. The rumors became lessons whispered in corners, passed along with nervous glances. The dream that Lina had chased of luxury, of status, of power, was no longer something to envy. It had become a warning, a chilling reminder of the lengths people would go to in their pursuit of a life they could never have. For the crew, Lina's tragic end served as proof of what could happen when dreams became obsessions, when desperation clouded judgment, when ambition outgrew reality. Her story, twisted by greed and illusions, became a cautionary tale for the others who came after her. The migrant workers, driven by the hope of a better life, could now see the dangers in chasing those dreams too fervently. They understood, perhaps for the first time, that not every story had a happy ending. Not every dream was meant to come true. The Sheikh's pride and need for control had led him to silence her, to end her life in a way that preserved his world. But in doing so, he had created a tragedy, a tale of obsession, power, and betrayal. Together, they had crafted something much darker than either of them could have ever imagined. As the sun began to rise over the silent waters, the yacht drifted toward another destination. Its deck was empty, save for the faint echoes of a life that had once been, now swallowed by the sea. The waves lapped against the hull, soft and serene, as if nothing had ever happened. And in the stillness of the morning, the camera lingered on the empty deck, the peaceful horizon stretching out before the ship, untouched by the chaos that had unfolded behind closed doors. The image of the luxury yacht, its gleaming surface unmarred, faded slowly into the distance, the story of Lina Marquez now sealed in the shadows of history. If this story made you reflect, like and subscribe for more true crime cases that uncover the hidden costs of desire, obsession, and power.